Hey guys, thanks for joining us today. We have Peggy Dennis with us, and she's taking a brave step of coming on and sharing just some of her trauma and the struggles in life. And excited for you to hear her testimony and hear just what she has to say. So Peggy, thanks for being here tonight, and I'm thankful that you're willing to come on to the podcast. So thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
So Peggy, just from the beginning, kind of tell me, where you're from, where you grew up, siblings, parents.
I was born in Belfouche, South Dakota. Reason why was because it was the closest hospital to the tiny town of 300 people that I grew up in, Hewlett, Wyoming.
Okay.
And so I was the last of four. We had a sister that passed 30 minutes after she was born. She was premature. And I have one brother and one sister. And my mom and dad, divorced somewhat early in my life. I was about 11 or 12.
Okay. So you say you're the youngest?
Yes.
Okay. So what's kind of, as a child, the earliest memories you can remember, what was home life like for you?
Early on, home life wasn't bad. It was, I remember, I think my earliest memory is probably about 4 years old. And I remember being jealous because my siblings were in school and I was still stuck at home. Mm-hmm. But that's probably my earliest memory. It seemed like not long after. We moved around a lot, but we moved around in the town that we lived in. It was like my parents couldn't stay in one house. So I remember moving 5 or 6 times in that area. And so they would buy a trailer house, like a double wide, mm-hmm. and we would put it on this property. And then next thing I know, we moved and so we moved a lot.
What kind of work did your father do?
My dad was a saw filer. When I was young, I was so proud of him.
Yeah, say that again?
Saw filer.
I don't guess I know what that is.
So my dad worked at one of the largest sawmills in the nation.
Okay.
Oddly.
Saw filer.
Yes.
Okay.
So.
Okay, I got you. So his job was to keep the blades nice,
sharp and flat. So a regular circle saw blade that you would use on a
skill saw.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My dad worked on some that were taller than I am.
Wow.
And if they weren't perfectly flat when he was done, then the lumber wouldn't come out right.
Sure.
And my dad he was second in the nation as far as quality. I was so proud when I was a little girl because everybody, California, they were all after him. Everybody wanted my father to move and to work for him. And they offered him, back then when I was, like 5 or 6, they were offering $20-something an hour for him to move, but he was making good money anyway. We didn't grow up early on. We didn't grow up poor. We were definitely middle class. Mm. And my mom worked in the same shop with my dad. So they worked in the same shop. And we went to church. My grandparents got saved after my parents were together. My mom grew up in church, but my dad did not. And there was nothing, about God, in his life. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I was told after he passed that there were times my grandparents, his parents, were full-blooded German drinkers. And they would leave my dad and my aunt for days out in the country. They had a country home way out, and they would leave and go to the bars, and they would bring the oldest one with them. And he would sleep in the truck while they would be in the bar half the night. And they would stay in town for days. And then they'd come back out. Well, my dad would have to go out and shoot, animals and stuff to feed his sister. So my dad didn't have a great childhood, which was hard for me to hear because my grandparents they lit the moon. So my dad's parents were the best.
Yeah.
But they were saved.
Yeah.
So they were not the same people that my dad grew
Yes,
up
when
with.
you knew them, they were living for the Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Makes a huge difference.
Big, huge difference.
So you say that your parents got divorced while you're pretty young. You said maybe 11.
11-ish.
When do you think, what caused the turn for the worse? Because you said you guys were doing good and making decent money, going to church. Where did the downfall start to happen?
My father felt called to preach. And the church that we went to, I never did like the church. They were not what I would consider good people. And they laughed at him when he told the people that were supposed to be his friends. I mean, can you imagine the people that you go to church with laughing? And it wasn't it was a mocking laugh. And my dad walked out that day and never went back. He was insulted, humiliated, and, and I do believe my dad was called to preach. But it spiraled him like completely out of control.
Yeah, so you think that when he was laughed at and not embraced for what God was calling him, he just kind of ran from God and just went the opposite direction?
Completely the opposite. We all quit going to church. My mom didn't go either. My mom was always, for as long as I can remember, she was very abusive. Like, I think my parents had issues, and she would just take it out on us. As a matter of fact, my sister asked her one time, she said, "Do you just get pleasure out of this?" And she beat her again. It wasn't called a spanking, it was called a beating, and in our household, that's what it was called. Because my mom had a paddle board. It was about that long. It was about that thick, and then there was a strip of board that went across, and that's what she used when she spanked us. And a spanking was 20 to 30 swats at a time, and after a few, so many swats, us kids would be jumping up and down because we're like, no more, And so it was our fault that we had bruises, on our back and the backs of our legs and stuff because we were jumping up and down. If we'd just stand still, it wouldn't have happened.
So what drove your parents apart?
My dad, shortly after we stopped going to church, my mom's sister and her 2 kids moved in with us because she had left her husband. And my cousin was the same age as my brother, and I want to say she was 14 or 15. And we knew that my dad was messing around with her. We knew that there was sex going on between the 2 of them. And when I guess my aunt and my mom found out about it, they I remember being told that we were being investigated, and that if anybody came to the school and asked, that we knew nothing about it. We were told that is what we were to say. Well, that wasn't the right way to approach that. My dad should have been in prison for what he did.
So he was sleeping with your 14-year-old cousin.
14, 15, somewhere in there, yes.
So then, but your mom told you just not to talk about it?
Yeah,
so they didn't turn him in, or?
No. And shortly after kind of everything blew over, that's when my aunt and her kids moved out because, of what had transpired.
Yeah. And
So
how old were you when that happened? What age were
it's
you?
very hard for me to remember, but I think I was 8 or 9
Okay.
when they left.
Yeah.
I think I was like 8-ish when they moved in, and it went on for about a year, I think, because I remember my dad always favored it. He would favor her, and so she would get allowance, and my sister and I were like, we've done chores our whole lives, we've never gotten allowance. Why is this girl come in and now all of a sudden she's getting an allowance? And we never knew these cousins. Like, they lived in the East. We never really met them until they moved in with us. So we didn't know them. And so to us, they were city slickers, And and she was very much on board with what was going on. So it wasn't against her will. She was very much she wanted it as much as my father did. I don't know why. I don't know if she had been abused as a child or what. I'm not sure why she wanted that, but he gave her attention that apparently she had never had before, and she wanted it. And so we were upset because he was giving her allowance, and she was getting allowance because she was a smoker. Well, she wouldn't leave my sister and I alone until we started smoking. And I hated it because it tasted so nasty, but I was a sissy. Well, you sissy, you can't handle it. So I kept on until I could smoke, going through the nausea and all of that. And here I was, like probably 9 years old, 8, 9 years old, and I'm smoking. My sister too, and my brother. We're all smoking. And that stayed with me for many, many years.
So I guess your parents didn't really care if did they know y'all were smoking? Or?
My parents were partying a lot.
Uh-huh.
My mom didn't know anything about it, but my dad was buying our cigarettes to hush us up. See, it was hush money in a way.
Yeah.
So my parents were gone a lot at night, and we would be down at the city park with all the other bad kids, I guess you'd call it, smoking cigarettes, doing whatever we wanted. It was kind of a freedom at that time for me, because the beatings kind of had slowed down to basically nothing. My mom and my aunt and my dad was off partying a lot, and so we were home alone a lot, and we were just doing whatever we wanted to do.
Yeah. So once your cousins and your mom's sister moves out, what did life start to look like then?
It doesn't seem like it was long after that. When my brother was older, so he had been at the local bar, and he had met a girl, and she was from South Dakota, and she didn't have a place to stay, and so he brought her home, and my mom didn't want her to stay, but my dad said yeah, and so she stayed. And my parents were, I believe, working on their relationship, trying to get through what they'd been through. And my sister and I found out he was sleeping with her, my brother's girlfriend, and we told Mom, because we were upset about it. We were angry that he was doing it again to her. I may have not had the greatest feelings for my mom, but I still loved her, and I wasn't going to sit back, and then of course my brother was hurt, so hurt. But my dad, he didn't hit. Well, my sister says she remembers being hit by him. Like, my dad, when he would hit, it wasn't a hit. He would kick you, he would punch you. It was bad. I don't personally ever remember it happening. I've been told that I was hit by him, but I don't remember it. The only thing I ever remember is when we were in church, he'd thump us in the head if we were being loud.
Yeah.
But
Well, how old was your brother's girlfriend?
she was a couple years older than him, so I think he was 17, so she was about 19.
Well, so so that was that the final straw. That's what that caused your mom to leave him.
My mother and my brother left right then, packed up and left, and she went looking for work. And she found a job in Sheridan, Wyoming, which is just about 300 miles from where we lived. My grandparents lived there. And so I was super excited to get to go live there, because of my grandparents and see them more often than we did. And things seemed okay. Like we lived there for about a year, and honestly, I don't remember that paddleboard even going with us. I never remember seeing it again after that. It was like the anger that was in my mom was better than it was before. But my mom was, with me, she was very verbally abusive. She would tell me how I should never have been born. It wasn't just none of us kids were planned, but I was an accident. I was a mistake. I was the bad kid, always in trouble, just, how Elijah is. Well, I was a little like that, it kind of passed down. I tried to control myself, but I was just in trouble a lot. And I kind of felt like my mom hated me. My sister and her had a great relationship. I realized my mom didn't hate me, but she didn't understand me. And she made me feel so unwanted, made me feel so worthless. I felt all my life. I've never had anyone make me feel like I had any value.
Yeah. So here's some tissues if you end up needing them.
Thanks.
So did you move with your mom?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
She came back as soon as she got a job, and she picked us up and took us with her.
Okay. So did your parents have split custody? Did you go?
No, my mom had full custody. My dad was paying child support. He married that girl. And
Your brother's girlfriend?
yes, he married her. Yep. And we would go visit. I didn't really want to go see him, but I always felt guilt. Like, I didn't want to make him feel bad, And that's really when the sexual abuse started. And
After they had split up?
after my parents split up, when we would go visit my dad, that's when it first started. And she was okay with it. Like, she was okay with what he was doing. At that time, it was just touching, but she was okay with that. She was fine with it. Didn't bother her. I guess she thought it was normal. I don't know. She was very different. She was more manly.
I would say that there was probably some tragedy in her life for her to
I'm assuming, yes.
get with somebody
that much older.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a...
Because he was old enough to be her dad.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's not a... Something's happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure her normal was not what normal is.
Yeah.
So your dad started sexually abusing you, and you say at first he was just touching you inappropriately. Did you immediately tell your mom? Did you just silence yourself? And do you think that was normal? I mean, do you remember kind of what was going on?
My sister and I did tell Mom, but she
Was it happening to your sister too?
Not quite to the you know, I think there was very little with her. You know, my sister and I, after the divorce, we went from being normal fighting sisters to very best friends. We literally just leaned on each other about everything. I didn't tell my mom. It was my sister that told my mom. And she said, well, that's the only way that your dad knows how to show affection. And my sister told her, well, if that's the only way, then I don't want my dad's affection. I remember we would talk about it because we only went to my dad's on in the summer months. We didn't go any other time. And some summers we didn't go because we might be in Pennsylvania or somewhere, because my mother followed my aunt, her sister, everywhere she went. And so, and the times that my aunt and my mom lived together, my aunt she was kind of cruel too. She was cruel to my sister though. She was never really cruel to me, but she was very cruel to my sister. She treated her like she was gonna sleep around or whatever, and she was young, and she wasn't even thinking like that. But my aunt would just really rag her about the way she walked and the way she carried herself, stuff like that. And because of that kind of thing, my sister and I, we were the only one that we had each other.
Yeah.
It was just us. We had, and we went to my dad's. She was 17 or 18, I can't remember. But we went there for the summer, and my sister met a guy, and she married him. And I stayed because she was my best friend, and I didn't want to leave her. But I didn't want to be there because that, woman that my dad was with, her name was Robin. She was very physically abusive with me. Like one time she picked me up by my throat and slammed me against the wall. But I didn't want to leave because here I am, my dad's, touching, and she's doing this, and I just want to be with my sister, and so I would go over there and I would hang out with her because it was summer, I didn't have school. And so I would go to my sister's house, and she would, like, when I would come home, she would hit me and things like that because she didn't want me over there. You're going to ruin things for your sister. And you don't need to be over there making them, they're newlyweds. They need time, It was during the day he was working. But she was just horrible. And my sister came over, and I don't remember where she was at, but she wasn't home. And my sister came over, and we talked to my dad. And we said, what she was doing to me. And my dad didn't know, how she was doing me. And we basically talked him. He left her that day. He kicked her out. We got my dad, talked into that. But that's when, for me, everything went very south. I have only recently remembered things that happened after she left. Within the last few months. Many times I've asked God, to not reveal anything that I didn't already remember because I didn't want to remember anything. I knew somewhere in me that there was more, but I didn't want to know. And so the seizures started. And they started after, I didn't remember anything. But my sister and I were hanging out one day, and this was about 2007, and she had said something about Dad, doing whatever, and I was like, what are you talking about? And she said, Dad touching us, and she said it was always worse for you than it was for me. And I said, you're out of your mind. I said, you're crazy. What are you talking about? Well, it was after that things started coming back to me. And I think God protected me from some of the deeper memories because they were too much. But in 2007, I had a seizure. And then I had one in 2010. And then I went through a divorce in 2012. And before the divorce, after my husband at the time told me that he was seeing another woman and that we were through, about a week later, I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. And it was bad. It was to the point where my mom came because I was on a ventilator, in a coma, in ICU. And I had been in a coma for 10 days. And the problem was they couldn't get rid of the pneumonia. And if I came out of the coma, because I couldn't breathe on my own, I would be pulling the ventilator out. And so they literally had to strap me to the bed because I would go in, they would put me in the coma, and my blood pressure would bottom out to the point where I was almost dead. And they would have to give me something to raise my blood pressure back up, which would bring me out of the coma. I did that for 10 days, in and out, in and out, in and out of this coma. And my organs all started shutting down. My liver, my, kidneys. I can't remember everything because I was in a coma. But they told my mom that it was time to make funeral arrangements, that they didn't expect me to live past the next 24 hours. I was fading very fast. And, sorry. And my mom, she said, no, God's not finished with her yet. And she said, I refuse to let go of her. And the next day, the doctor came into the room, and I was in such fragile shape. He said, we're losing her anyway, take her to MRI. Because, see, they were bringing an x-ray machine to me because I couldn't be moved. I was in such fragile shape. And when they took me to MRI, they found out my lungs were clear. I didn't have any fluid in my lungs. In the back, behind your lungs, are pleural sacs. I'm sure you've heard of pleurisy. That's what I had. I mean, in the beginning, my lungs were full, but the antibiotics had gotten rid of so my lungs were clear. So they took me straight to surgery, and they drained 2 liters and 20 ounces of fluid out of those pleural sacs. And within, I think it was a couple hours, they pulled the ventilator to see if I could breathe on my own. And I did. And they pulled me out of the coma. And I had to stay in the hospital still for several days because of what I'd been through. But, I ended up with COPD from it. And, but I'm here, I'm here today. I mean, I think at that time I realized God really did care and he wasn't finished with me yet.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of talked before. You agreed to be on the podcast, and you had told me some things of just the trauma of what had happened, and I think I'm not an expert on it, but it seems like that if Satan can allow a boy or a girl to feel not valued, they almost feel like stuff's happening to them because they're worthless, or
Yes.
because that's just almost punishment, or that's just the...
I wasn't worthy. I always felt like I just wasn't worthy.
Yeah, because you had told me a story about you guys being at the lake.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe when your dad was still with...
Yes. That was the first thing that happened. Was it wasn't the first thing, but it was the first major thing.
Yeah.
Before that, it was just like touching, like that. But that day, do you really want it that graphic?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty. So that was the first major.
Yes. Yes. My dad was showing me how to masturbate.
Yeah, yeah. And didn't you have cousins or maybe your sisters?
My sister was right there, and so was his wife.
Yeah.
And we were in the back of the Suburban because we had been at the lake. So we were in the back of the Suburban changing. My sister and I were.
Yeah.
And I think she had gotten changed quicker. And my dad opened the back door, and I still wasn't dressed. And he decided that he needed to show me, how I could take care of myself. And so he showed me how to masturbate. And my sister was right there, and, she was like disgusted by, what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that just understanding the level of the abuse, maybe for somebody might be important. But that's super tragic. I mean, that is, I guess I don't get that. I don't understand how a man could do that to any kid, let alone his own kid or any kid. It wouldn't even matter if the kid, the level does not decrease whether it's your kid or somebody else. But yeah, I mean, that definitely will set a young child, young lady, young girl into a lot of confusion, feeling probably dirty.
Yeah.
So, but you must have had somewhat forgiveness, for the fact that you said that you talked your dad into leaving the girl, and you go back to that, and you said, but that's...
It was actually probably about a week or two after that happened that we joined together, because for one, my sister and I were like, how can she allow that to happen? What kind of woman watches her husband do that to his daughter and doesn't say anything?
Yeah.
What kind of person does that? And then, of course, she was so rough on me. And, I don't know if she hated me or what, but...
So when your dad left her, it didn't stop?
Oh, it got worse.
Got worse.
Because my dad was an alcoholic, and he was constantly crying, sobbing, because he was alone. And one night I was in my room. I always kept my door shut and locked. But I was in my room, and he started hollering for me, and I was like, oh boy. So I went into his room, and he was laying in bed, and he said, can you give me a hug? And I said, yeah. I didn't want to, but, I kind of felt bad. I kind of felt guilty, like it was my fault because I talked him into getting rid of her, so it was my fault. And so I walked over there and I leaned down and, to give him a hug, and he pulled me down. And my dad was naked. And he pulled me under the covers. I was clothed, but I'll be honest, I don't remember what happened after that. I don't know if I want to.
Sure.
But I do remember another scenario where I was in the bathroom. I was on the counter picking pimples, I think, or something like that. I was up on, teenager up on the counter and in the mirror. And my dad came in. I was dressed. My dad came in and but I had the door shut, but he came in anyway. And I just turned around and sat down on the counter. And that time he put his fingers in me. And I remember taking my feet and my dad was always drunk. So I pushed him away and ran to my bedroom. And I locked the door behind me. And I called my mom the next day, and I said, I didn't tell her what happened. I never did. But I told her that if she would come get me, I would come home, but I wasn't going back to school. I was done with school. And she agreed to it. And I moved back with my mom. And I never went back to my father's house. I was only at my mom's for probably about 1.5 years. And then I ran away from home.
So that, but that's a lot. I just can't imagine that, that's a young lady supposed to feel, you think a dad should be to where a young lady feels safe, protected.
My dad he would caress my face and he would say, "You're so beautiful. You're the most beautiful of all of my children." And it disgusted me. Mm. You're not supposed to feel that way. I mean, if you tell your child, your daughter, how beautiful she is, you expect her to feel beautiful.
Yeah.
I felt dirty.
Yeah.
And disgusting.
Yeah. And so you had told me that you met a boy that you say, so you were like 17 and you ended up running off with him.
Yes, I used him to get out because even though my mother and I were okay, she was too controlling. I honestly felt like I was never going to get a move out, that she would keep me there.
Yeah. And so you run away, you end up getting pregnant by him.
Yep.
And obviously that relationship didn't last.
No.
And so you move on,
I moved in with my sister in Iowa. Okay. I was, when I got there, I was about 8 months pregnant. And, I had left and went back to my mom because I was kind of scared. But my mom wouldn't let me come home. But my aunt paid for my bus ticket. The one that I think I told you, the one that I wished that was my mom, always wished she was my mom. She paid for my bus ticket, and I went to her house and stayed with her for a while. And my mom did finally get over it enough where she let me come home. And then I felt ready to go back. And I did. I took a bus back, stayed a couple more months, and that's when he was so different. I don't know what happened while I was gone, but he wasn't the same person, and I couldn't do it. I didn't know what happened. I didn't know what was wrong, but there was a distance. He would leave and be gone all night, and I knew it was probably drug related and stuff like that, and that's maybe how he was making money or whatever. But I didn't want any part of it, and I didn't want my child to have any part of that. And that's when I asked my sister if I could come up there and move in with her, and she said, yeah.
Yeah. And then you were married again after, or actually you never married him, right? So you got married, and I think kind of the common theme is when a young lady is of what a man looks like is tainted.
Yes.
You know, what a good man looks like is tainted.
Yes.
Usually you're not out searching for a good man, or you don't find don't find a good man. So
a lot of times you feel like that you're just unworthy anyway, and you're just blessed that a guy wants anything to do with you because you're tainted now.
Wow. Yeah.
And so why would a man want anything to do with me?
I think Susan said something real similar to that feeling like, wow, I can't believe somebody actually wants me.
Anything to do with me.
Wow. So we'll move on to all the, he had 2 marriages that didn't work out after that. Is that correct? And just probably bad choice of men.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the second time I really thought I'd done well, because he would go down front at church, and stuff like that.
So your second husband, yeah, that's right. You met him at church.
I didn't meet him at church. My sister introduced us, but he started going to church with me.
Oh, okay.
And we were friends. We weren't dating. We were friends for a few years. And he would go to church with me, and I kind of had a suspicion that maybe he was just doing that to try and get me, But then, I got really sick, and I ended up being home for a couple weeks and didn't go. He went to church without me, and I thought, oh, well, maybe he is there for himself, Mm-hmm. His parents went to church, so I thought, well, maybe he is there for himself, not just for me. Maybe he's, different. And so we did start dating, and we married and moved to Kansas City. And when we moved to Kansas City, I tried to find a church that fit the bill, so to speak. The churches were either huge or I just struggled and struggled and struggled. I couldn't find a church. And so we only lived there for a year, and we came back to Arkansas. And I went back to my old church. But the church was spirit-filled, but the people were very cliquish in the church. And when I went back, I just didn't feel welcome. I didn't feel like...
You didn't feel like you fit in?
Yeah, didn't even want to be there. And then, this is something you don't know. We had been married for about a year, little over a year, and he approached me. And I told you he had been into porn, and I didn't know it. Well, he approached me, and he said, I want to try something. And I said, what? He said, I want to swing. I want to be a swinger. And I'm like, what, you want to buy a swing set? I had no clue. I didn't even know what it was. And he's like, no. He said, you swap partners. And I'm like, no, not happening. I'm like, And he just never gave up on it, never gave up. And he kind of hounded and badgered me about it until I honestly felt like I was going to lose him if I didn't do it. And I loved him with everything in me. I loved him. And so I gave in to it. And we lived that way for about 10 years.
Wow.
And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. And that's, I believe, why. Because he knew I was done. He knew I could not live like that anymore. I couldn't. I mean, I wasn't into it anyway, so, we would go to these parties, and I got to the point where I was just drinking until I was blacking out. And when I say blacking out, I was still functioning, but I had no idea what I was doing because I had blacked out. And so I did the blackout thing for about a year, and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I can't live this kind of life. It was painful. It was painful that I wasn't enough again. I mean, a year into your marriage and you're not enough. And so.
Wow.
But I had been talking to him and telling him, I'm sorry, but I'm done with this and I want to get into church. I want to get back, and he didn't want that. And next thing I knew, he said that he was divorcing me, and he never came back home. And we had built this ginormous house, retardedly ginormous house, and I couldn't afford it. So I moved out, and I moved in with, at first I moved in with Heather, my niece, and her, at the time, Josh and her were just boyfriend and girlfriend. And that wasn't working well for me. It's hard, it's hard to go from, the family situation to, my kids were grown, and, I ended up actually moving in with, Adam and Matricia and Jarrett all lived together in a home together, or in an apartment together. But Adam had got busted, and he decided to run from it, and he went to his father's. So he went to South Carolina, and he went to his father's, and I moved in with Jarrett and Matricia and because it was a 2-bedroom, took the other room. But Adam was only gone a few months before he realized that it was not working for him there. And he called me. He says, I'm either hitchhiking home or you're buying me a bus ticket. I got to get out of here. And I said, well, don't hitchhike. I'll get you here. And so I sent him a bus ticket and got him back home.
So when you when you decided you didn't want that lifestyle anymore with your husband, and he left you, and you had mentioned that you wanted to get back into church, at what point did you because when I met you, Adam wasn't married. I think Adam had just kind of come out of a dark place, and I didn't know much about you other than you were Adam's mom. Mm-hmm. And
believe it or not, I'd been going to Living Faith for 2 years before Adam ever attended.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of my feeling of unworth, I would come in, and I would pretty much kind of last minute. I'd come through the door. I'd sit in the second to the last pew. Or back then, we had pews. We didn't have chairs.
Yeah.
And I would sit in the second to the last pew. And as soon as service was over, I was out the door. One time, Pastor caught me. And he was like, hey, wait a minute, and he gave me a hug. And it was the first time I ever felt really loved.
Wow.
A Christ love, not a
pure love. Yeah. Wow.
And so I actually would hang out in the foyer after church because I kind of needed that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because you had been plagued with false. I mean, you're probably so confused what love. What I mean, you married. Your dad. Harmed you in an unspeakable way. your husbands make you feel unwanted. You're not, like you said, not good enough.
Yeah.
And but this journey now, where you're at now, I know you got some medical deal with the seizures and stuff, but I have gotten to watch. I mean, now you sit up at the front.
Yes. Adam drugged me up to the front.
Yeah, and you haven't left though. You're there. You're there.
Yep.
You got 2 grandbabies.
Yes.
You know, which I know you got more than that, but you got the 2. You got the Adam's 2 kids that you're with a lot at church, and great grandma. You know, a good grandma, not great grandma, but a good grandma, and a beautiful woman of God.
Thank you.
What do you feel? I mean, have you gotten to a point now that you know the value, like how God sees you? Do you feel like you're still in that struggle of feeling of worth?
I'm working hard, but it's still, I'm with a counselor now, and we've got the seizures under control. It took 13 years of seizures for them to realize that the seizures were not epilepsy. I was having attacks of PTSD. That's what these seizures were caused from. And any time that I would have like an overwhelming amount of stress or anxiety or even like something painful, not physical, but, emotionally painful, I would have a seizure. A lot of times it would be the next day that I would have a seizure. But, like, I'm terrified to fly. And before my ex and I divorced, we went to the Dominican Republic with a group of those people. And I had a seizure in the Dominican because I'm so terrified of flying. And I think I was scared to death. If this plane goes down, I'm going to hell. This is not the life I want. And so I think that's what caused the extreme fear that caused me to have the seizure the next day. But after the hospital, I started having them a lot. And then they slowly tapered back a lot because I got into church a little more balanced, and stuff like that. So it would only be really traumatic things that would bring on, seizures and stuff like that. But it took them, I might be in a different place, but I think, I'm where I'm going to say that I know I'm where God wants me. I am in God's will. I am finally where I know God wants me. And he's working with me, and I am healing. Yeah. It's just, 50 years of it, it's going to take more than a day or two. Sure,
yeah. Yeah, Peggy, I'm sitting here thinking that's a lot of tragedy. I mean, your life has been plagued with tragedy, starting from very young.
I even lost a grandchild. My daughter, when she got pregnant, he died of SIDS. I brought him to church with me a few times.
Yeah.
And that was very traumatic. Sure. That threw me back into kind of a whirlwind of seizures and that again, Yeah. The devil has definitely hit me with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
He's tried, but he ain't got me.
No, and you can, for me, I hang on the promise that what Satan means for evil, because sin is evil. Sin does some very evil things. But thankfully, all that pain and hurt, if you allow God, he will turn it for good. And I think this is a big step.
It is.
Because number one, for your healing and for you to know your worth, the way that God looks at you. God has always looked at you as with value and has always loved you. And, but I believe if you allow God, he will give you the strength. I think that you're going to help other women heal. I think that through your pain and struggle, what's going to come out is a strong woman that knows how to see the beauty from within and how to grasp her value. And I think that you will help guide and teach other young ladies to know their value, to know their worth. Because that's a huge thing. I mean, for any woman to feel unworthy, they lower their standards.
Yeah.
They put themselves in situations that they shouldn't be in, but it's just they feel like that's maybe how they're
Not
stuck.
worth anything more than that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I believe that God's going to use your story and the pain and how God's pulled you out of it. And because sometimes we don't see it as well. It's hard for us to see it sometimes. But I'm just going to say that I see you with your grandkids, the way you love on them and that you give them your full attention. You understand the value of them knowing how much you love them and how much there's safety in your arms with them. I see how you treat your son, and you guys
in the beginning, I was so scared. When I found out I was having a boy, I thought that I'd been told, by, or seen on TV or whatever, that, if you've been abused, you'll be an abuser. Mm. And I was I considered giving him up for adoption. I was terrified. I thought, oh my gosh, what if I do to him? I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know how it worked.
Yeah.
But, I was a little withdrawn at first. But boy, I tell you, Adam and I had years where it was just the two of us. And I'm telling you, it was the best years of my life, really.
Yeah.
I mean, not negating my daughter, because Lord knows, she was beautiful and is beautiful. And, I love my children with everything in me. But I was terrified. I was terrified. And I was so withdrawn at first. I think he cried a lot when he was an infant. And I think he felt but it took a little while, but I realized I didn't have any desire to do anything like that. After I realized it, boy, I just grabbed onto that child and I loved on him. Now, I will say, as he got older, I did feel awkward about hugging him, and sadly, I felt like, as he was a teenager, that it was not okay anymore.
Yeah. Well, coming with that background and the things that, I could see that. I still, just because of how I was raised, I didn't have a father in my life that showed emotion, and so for a long time, even now, sometimes it's awkward for me to try to show emotion to my boys.
Yes.
But I do, and thankfully my boys are affectionate, and they love for the dad to hug them and tell them that, they tell me a lot that they love me, and I tell them I love them, and that's how it's supposed to be.
Yes.
The sad thing is that the world, or Satan tries to divide family and make it something that's not pure, that it's not a pure love, and something that is hurtful and disgusting. But God shows us how true love and purity of love is, and
yep, I can just grab at him now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever noticed, but I'll be up there and I'll just grab him, and I'll just draw him into me.
I do notice.
I'm not afraid
y'all's relationship
of it anymore.
Yeah. No, I think it's special. I do notice how that y'all have a special mother and son relationship, and y'all pray together, and you're great. He trusts you wholeheartedly with his kids, and Michelle, you and his wife have a great relationship. And
love Michelle with all my heart.
It's just amazing. I hope that you can see the blessings that God has gifted you.
I definitely, I'm not 100%, but I'm so much closer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Peggy, thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for coming on. I know it was, just a difficult thing, but I think you've done an extraordinary job. You're very strong in sharing some difficult things, and I do believe that it's going to help. Maybe somebody give the strength to get out of that situation.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, I believe so, and I hope that young ladies, reach out to you, that maybe you can strengthen and help them find their value.
Perfectly okay with that too.
Yeah, good. Well, guys, thanks for joining on this episode. And if you are somebody that maybe you found yourself in a similar position as Peggy, I'm sure that she would be open to maybe reaching out if you needed somebody to talk to or somebody that can relate. It's a very hurtful and deep subject, but unfortunately it's something that happens probably a lot more often than we would like to admit or realize. But we thank you guys for watching, and we look forward to you on the next episode. On our next episode, we're going to be talking with Jody Harris and just her journey of trying to find her self-worth. She really struggled with trying to find her identity and feel like that she actually was worth something. I think you'll be encouraged and inspired by her story. And remember, as always, the quickest way to become an idiot is to hang out with idiots, and you'll quickly become one. Thanks for watching.